All right, it's District Breakdown time. We were talking 4-6A. My main guy, Diggsy's here with us. Diggs, they took Haltom in to this district, and they're ready to roll with it. What do you feel about who could come out on top? I have a feeling who you might say, but talk about the rest of the district as well.
Well, why do you think I'm just going to pick Carroll just because they're Carroll? I mean, I'm a diverse sports writer. I like to get everybody involved, and I could talk about Byron Nelson. I think they're one of the teams to watch, especially in the area. We were talking off air, and I loved what you said. You said they got receivers for days, and when you look at the all district teams last week, you look at the recruiting thing, you look at the 7-on-7. You are onto something, my friend. I mean, Jake Wilson, he's going to get all the accolades because he's throwing the bombs. But their receivers, they're 4-5 deep. You got Ashton Williams, Landon Ransom, I saw him last year against McKinney Boyd, and he was incredible. He could do a little bit of everything: receiver, slot back, whatever you need with him. Pierce Dolan, Ezra Malamura, Gavin McCurley. I mean, five places you can put him at tight end. You can go 4 wide. I mean, Byron Nelson is really, and they have a good offensive line on top of that. They graduated a couple of key cogs on that offensive line, but they're a really good team. Now, I'm not going to pick them first. We will go with those little green dragons over there in Tarrant County as our first place team. But, we got to talk about Byron Nelson. Coach Pride has done a great job over in the whole Northwest ISD athletic department has really done a good job over there building up that ISD program. And I think when you look at them compared to Keller ISD, which is our other part of this, I think they're playing consistently better football than Keller ISD almost across the board, instead of some of those sports like baseball and softball where the Keller ISD schools tend to do well. But in the strength dominated sports, Northwest ISD has done pretty well for themselves over the last few years.
You tricked our viewers, man. We went a minute in there thinking you were picking Nelson to win this deal, and out of nowhere, all of a sudden, the little green dragon snuck up on your shoulder. You started remembering they had Owen Allen and whatnot. Before we get to Eaton, why don't you talk about Carroll for a little bit with with Caden coming back and the rest?
Last year, I wouldn't say I was hard on Caden, but I thought, when you lose Quinn Ewers, it's a drop off. And it's not to say that Caden Anderson wasn't a good football player. He was a fantastic quarterback, one of the best in the state. But Quinn Ewers is Quinn Ewers. I mean, he's going to be starting at the University of Texas most likely this year, and he's probably already a millionaire. That's the kind of player he is. But Caden Anderson, I think, in Southlake as a program could have really benefited from losing Ewers, because now they've had Caden Anderson, and he wouldn't have played last year. Now they got him for the second year. They get a little seasoning to complement Owen Allen. And what I think a lot of people don't talk about with Southlake Carroll is their offensive line is really, really good. And I think that's the strength of this team. Their offense is going to put up some all-worldly numbers. Harrison Moore had some fantastic numbers last year. Jacob Jordan, sophomore newcomer of the year. I'm a little concerned about their defense. I'm not concerned about their defense in a district setting, but when I was concerned about their defense the last couple of years, we got the Michael Jordan meme out, and they took that very personally and got much better as the year went on. And I think the coaching staff sees what they have, and I think they will get better as the year goes on. But early, I think they're going to struggle defensively, but I think the district will give them a chance to have good competition. I mean, they're not just going to roll over some of the top 4 or 5 teams in this district defensively. I think they're going to be able to get some scores put up on them, but how they're going to be able to do in the playoffs, I think, is Southlake is a team that most people are going to start in the rankings top 5, top 10 in the state. So obviously they have state championship aspirations. They have a state championship caliber offense. It's going to be the defense that I think will determine their fate this year and how far they can go.
Absolutely. Let's get back to Northwest ISD because we kind of glossed over Eaton, but let's talk about Eaton. I know they have graduated that big monster, Hunter Erb, who could probably take on 2 defenders every time he was blocking. Boy, he came into the studio and scared the life out of me, as big as that guy was. But who else do they have coming back, and can they stave off the Keller ISD teams to get a playoff spot?
Yeah, I think they will stave off the Keller ISD teams, and I think at this point, if we talk about our tiers, I've got Carroll as a tier 1 team. I've got Byron Nelson pretty much locked into that second spot from what I see. I have Northwest Eaton third, but I don't think there's a whole heck of a lot of difference between 3 and 6 in this district, and that's pretty much been the Keller ISD mantra. They have really good players. None of them are going to be really bad, but none of them are going to be that next level good. And I think you got Keller, Fossil Ridge, and Timber Creek all just kind of the same team. Got some really good players, have some really good athletes coming back, have some storylines where you can say, hey, they're going to be pretty good this year. But Northwest Eaton, I think, is just a step above them right now. They got Jaden Platt coming back, a very talented receiver, tight end kind of a player. You could see him go multiple positions. Dawson Templeton at linebacker, Caden Cochran, and Chance Owens on the defensive side of the ball. Again, when I think of Byron Nelson and Eaton, I almost think of go over to Midlothian and Heritage and Midlothian. They have such good offensive and defensive lines, and Northwest ISD really focuses on their strength and conditioning program, and both teams have really good offensive and defensive lines. And I think that's a bit of a difference between the Northwest ISD team and the Keller team. So when we talk about the Keller teams, we're going to be talking about a lot of their skill players. We're going to be talking about Marion Henry and Trey Griffiths and kind of the skill players, but I'm not going to be throwing out a lot of big names as far as the offensive and defensive line. And I think that's where they struggle a little bit when it comes to competing for the four playoff spots in these kinds of districts. I like Northwest Eaton number 3, and I know our boy James. We're gonna turn the light blue over in Keller. I've got Keller as my number 14 for now, but I almost always have Keller as my number 14 because it seems like they've always got a couple of players coming back that you just want to fall in love with. They got Trey Guerra coming back, Amarian Henry, Trey Griffiths, as I talked about, David Wagner, a really talented tight end. On the defensive side of the ball, Taylor Brandon and Michael Reagan coming back. I think Keller is just a notch above Keller Fossil Ridge, and I like Keller Fossil Ridge too. I think they're really young last year. They have a chance to be better. And Timber Creek, that Maddox Albritton over at receiver for Timber Creek, one of my favorite players from last year.
It's interesting how you mentioned way back before we started talking there that the Keller, Timber Creek, and Fossil Ridge kind of mirror each other, and that when they play each other, when those 3 teams go at each other, it's probably going to be for that 4th spot, like you're talking about. Talk about a little bit more about Timber Creek that you're talking about, the one receiver, and I like Lonnie Johnson over there as well. So they have the skill position players, but from listening to you talk, when they get into the trenches, it could be a problem there against the big dogs. Can they somehow – they have to eke out a win against each other to get that 4th spot?
They really do. And, you talked about Lonnie Johnson, and LeVar Thornton's a really good receiver over at Timber Creek as well. And Anderson Lewis is kind of pegged to be the receiver to throw it out to all those talented players. Linebacker, they got Devin Green coming back. But after that, you kind of look at their roster and you look at that infrastructure, what I call it, and you just don't see much there. They're going to have serviceable players, obviously high school capable players, but they're not going to have those elite star players and the depth. Like when we talk next week, when we talk about 5-6A, when we talk about Allen and Denton Geyer and Prosper and McKinney, it's linemen and defensive linemen and linebackers and just really good players that create that infrastructure for success. And when you look at the Keller ISD schools, they just don't have that kind of depth. And when you look at the numbers, they are kind of at the smaller side of that. Obviously, they don't have 7,000 students to pick from like Allen and 3,000 to 4,000 like Prosper and some of the McKinney schools. So Keller, that's where they struggle a little bit. Also, I would be remiss if we didn't give a shout out. We don't give enough love to special teams players here on the campfire, and I apologize. I'd like to look at the camera right now and apologize to all the special team players because Southlake has the best punter in the nation right now in Tyler White. So got to throw that name out there. You got to go find a highlight of him hitting an 80-yard punt because that kid is for real and he's going to be a star. We're probably going to see him in the NFL when it comes to punting. So throw his positive name out there. And Keller Central is kind of the same thing. They got, in fact, Keller Central is, if you could almost merge Keller Central and Keller together, I think you might have a really good playoff ready team because Keller Central's strength is their defensive side of the ball. They got Adrian Wilson coming back, Weston Underhill, and Joseph Matumbo, but they don't really have any skill players and they don't have any real offensive line strength. So I think Keller Central, I have them at number 7. I've got Holton at number 8. So a lot of questions about Keller, and we'd be remiss, we're talking about this off air as well. Got to throw out a shout out to the head coach over at Keller Central, Mike Sports. What a football name right there, Mike Sports. We're thinking about you today, Coach.
It almost felt like at the age of 12 he wanted to be a high school football coach, and he went to the courtyard, made sure he got that name changed to something that could stay up there on the placard in front of his desk there. But man, it just seems like, to me, it seems like it was just yesterday we were talking about, oh, Haltom is beating Trinity for the district title. And I guess it works at Haltom in waves, and their wave of solid players like Michael Black and them came and went. And are you talking 8 for them, or are they going to battle out with Central for that last spot?
Yeah, I think they're the 4th tier. I think they could certainly beat Keller Central. I just look at what they have coming back. And again, that infrastructure, I think Keller Central's defense against Haltom's offense is just going to be a little bit of a mismatch. They got the really talented receiver, not quite Michael Black talented, but Alan Reynolds coming back. Xander Clay is a beast on the offensive line. Jeremiah Sanders is a good receiver. And Randy Alunga, linebacker, coming back. Very good core seniors coming back for Haltom, but after that, it really drops off as far as depth goes. And you look at their JV teams and their freshman teams, they don't really got much coming up to support that infrastructure continually. I think they caught lightning in a bottle beating Trinity a few years ago, Trinity being a little bit down, Haltom having their best class in a while. And when you even look at Haltom, and I think they would really benefit from going to 5A D1, playing with Richland and Birdville there, Birdville ISD, bunkmates, as it were. It's almost like Fort Worth Pascal when we talk about them. There's that one team out, with the rest of their district in lower classifications, and I think it really hurts them. And I think Haltom, even moving a little bit further east into the more Keller, the northeast a little bit into this district, I don't think it does them any favors. I can't see them eking out a win. I think they would probably prefer to be in 3-6A because I think they would have been more competitive against Bell and Pascal and teams of that ilk.
Gotcha. So you got South Lake number 1 and Northwest ISD teams 2 and 3, and whoever can block and protect their quarterback out of the Keller teams will be number 4. You say Keller. I'm going to go with Timber Creek, and then we'll battle it just so me and you can argue throughout the year.
With what you're saying with Keller, you're picking Timber Creek, I'm picking Keller. Both of those situations would end up making South Lake D2, and I think that's what South Lake, we got to start looking at bracketology early. And with new UIL realignments, it usually takes me a year to kind of remember where everybody is. But Carroll would obviously prefer to go D2. Obviously, with Denton Geyer likely a D2 team, that's their doorstep. But then you avoid the Duncanvilles and DeSoto's of the world in the regional finals. So I think South Lake would probably prefer a D2 route. And Keller or Timber Creek making the playoffs would push them to D1 with Northwest Eaton, and then Byron Nelson and South Lake Carroll would go D2. So that's something we will keep looking at, maybe in a potential podcast or things we do throughout the year. Will Carroll go D1 or D2? That'll be one of the storylines we track this year on Inside High School Sports.
My man, always getting a plug in there. I appreciate it, Dix. Hey, I'll talk to you next week. We'll go up 5-6A.
Next week, 5-6A, the best district in DFW. We will talk it next week.
Maybe even the state. Talk to you next week.